Hello everybody, this is a follow-up on my original guide to setting up Hypixel SkyBlock on your own local host. Last time I didn't exactly cover how to set up the services, which is needed for things like the API, the bazaar, and obviously for item tracking. So if I get a Hyperion, for example, and I get the information of the item, you can see that this is the first Hyperion ever made. It was made just now, and I'm the only player that this has ever been attached to. This is what Hypixel actually does to figure out whether or not you've duped, because using this, we can know that if there's two players attached to a Hyperion with a single item UID, and we know that they haven't traded it, so one still has it and the other one still has it, clearly it must be duped because this actual item's NBT has been cloned. If I get another Hyperion, for example, and I get this one's information, this is the second made ever in history. This is also how the museum works using this data. For other things such as let me just get rid of this. For other things such as oh my gosh. So like I was saying, once we get to the hub, say we want our auction house to work /AH. Here you go, we have it working. Now, that does not come stock working within the project. When we're looking at our project here on beautiful GitHub, the standard setup guide that you follow here for proxy setup and game server setup will only give you the actual game. Like you'll get obviously the full island experience, the full hub experience, but you're not going to get the services, which is the auction house, the bazaar, the item tracker, and the API. The item tracker, the auction house, and bazaar are pretty self-sufficient. If I go into the hub, for example, and I try to, let's say I go over here, and I turn off the auction house, and I try to run /AH, it's not going to work. That's the same for bazaar, and that's the same for the item tracker. So if you have the item tracker, you can't even enter the museum area at all if you have it off. But the API is the interesting one that I wanted to show today, because the rest are kind of described on the guide, but the API is not really obvious what to do. This is going to be somewhat what your configuration is going to look like. You'll have your settings. So assuming you followed the steps, this is like a part 2. You'll have your settings.yml for your nano limbo, and then you'll have your configuration with your resources.json, and that should have that'll suffice everything else here. So you run API, you run bazaar, you run item tracker, just as the guide states. So if we go down here, java-jar, insert the jar file, there's nothing special with them. However, when you run the API, you're going to get an output that looks like, so this is like a command prompt, except it's just in my terminal. You're going to get an output that looks like this. Now, this looks a little bit scary compared to the other ones, because if I look at something like the bazaar, it's just registering a bunch of channels, initialized, yay, easy. If we go to the API, we have a port, then we have a service API, and then we're connecting the databases. No port specified, so you're like, how do I specify a port? A port is specified by merely entering additional program arguments. So I go Notepad, for example, java-jar, API, service, my S key is really not working that well today, and then you just put the port in. So the default port is going to be 8080, and I'm going to show you what that will look like. So say we got it running, we're going to go to localhost. Oh, that was a fumble. We're going to go to localhost 8080, and this is what you should see. You're going to get an 8-digit code, and it's going to tell you to run /verify API code from an authenticated account. Now, authenticated account basically means administrator account. So if I'm, for example, rank Softy MVP plus, so I'm a non now, I can't just go and what was the command again? /verify API. Verify API. It's not going to let me, not going to even register that I'm putting in the command. If I admin myself, boom, we got it. So that's what that means. And all you do is you put in this code here, so verify API, and then it will say code has been successfully verified. Check your web browser, and you're going to see that it lets you in. So it's tracked now that you're logged in, which user can actually let you in. And this is where you're going to be handling API keys. So you have 2 fields for API keys. The actual key itself is going to be automatically generated. You do not get to pick that. You have a description and an allowed usage per day. So say I have a friend called Bob, and I have Bob's key. I want to give Bob access to the API. And now I know that Bob likes, spamming requests a little bit. So average allowed usage per day, he gets 3 requests per day. We're going to put Bob in a bit of a diet here. We click generate new API key. Easy. Here we've got it, and we copy. In terms of actual usage of the API, you just at localhost 8080-API, then you got /user. So obviously this needs the API key, and you have /profile. And what these return is, if I open up my MongoDB Compass, which I probably should have had open before I clicked start recording. If we open this up, all this will give you is the data here. So you're going to pass in an ID for a profile. So this is a profile ID. And then here, this is a user ID. I know that it's named profiles, but this is what the user endpoint gives you. So you pass in the player's UID, and then within the profiles array, you're going to have a list of their profile IDs, and you're going to have, it's going to tell you which one they've got selected, and then you merely query /user, and you'll get everything here. In terms of maybe cutting down what we give, we'll have to think about that. But general API management, this is how it's done. This has not been tested on Linux, and also it does not currently support SSL. So solutions for this, we can put it behind Cloudflare, which is probably the most optimal solution. But remember, if you're going to put it behind Cloudflare, you need to have actual firewall rules on your origin server, which is going to have restrict basically the traffic, so only Cloudflare requests can go through it. But once you've done that, that's really the API server's done. You can start handing out API keys. The rest of the services, so item checker, just like normal, just a normal jar file, and the same for, well, I've killed Auction House, but the same for Auction House, and the same for Bazaar. And that's all the server setup really is. So it's pretty simple. The one thing that people get wrong is you need to have it in the same place that your SkyBlock core jar file is, because it's going to end up using the same resources.json, because this is how it does the database connections. Like, for example, I think all of them actually use a database. Yeah, if we go to the database, where did I even leave it? Where did I leave my MongoDB? I think I closed it. If we reopen up MongoDB and we open up Mindstorm, you see Bazaar. So this is what's being used by the Bazaar service. We can see tracked items, which this was the output that we got from the command. This is what the the item tracker service does. And there's no auctions that have been put up, but there would be an auction collection here if there were auctions to have, and obviously API admin and API key, which you can see that they're saved here. And yeah, that's the whole setup. So that's how basically you self-host your own Hypixel SkyBlock. Bye-bye, guys.